because Big Corp won't allow the politicians to do it. That's just what it is.
What do you mean mandate? They won't pay their workers $15 an hour?
No, what I'm saying is because your point was right. We instead of cutting costs by deleting a few employees or increasing the product or service price, you said to what?
We're not deleting any employees, right? We're not deleting any employees.
Firing them, laying them off. I
didn't mean deleting them from the ecosystem. This guy. Welcome back to Gen Z Speaks. It's been a long time since we filmed one of these, but we're back. We were kind of busy snowboarding a couple weeks back. We enjoyed the process, but before we talk about that, let me introduce our guests. Matt, how you doing, man?
Doing great, man. Ready for the next step in our timeline.
Absolutely. Me too. And then Jenish, how are you? Jenish, you're in India, right?
Yeah, I'm here for some family events. Doing great, man. Looking forward to the new year.
So what motivated us to snowboard in the first place? I forgot about that. Why did we decide to snowboard in Lake Tahoe?
Because
we've been wanting to snowboard.
One time I was just texting Matt and I was like, yeah, we've been kind of wanting to do it for a while now, but I was just like, yeah, we should go. And then Matt was like, sure, let's do it. Yeah.
And Tahoe is the best place to snowboard right now. So we learned. I think we're pretty decent. It was fun though. It was a blast. Honestly, I think it's insane how they have the whole Nevada, California border, and you can switch over between the two sides, and they're completely different mountains, right? So it's a different vibe for both. So Tahoe is really dope. The town we stayed in, Heavenly, you guys liked it? I liked it a lot. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Tight knit.
Yeah, I like the vibe.
What the best part of me obviously was learning snowboarding, but it was also the views on the gondolas. I don't know if you remember, but the first day we went, it was insane. Coming down that gondola, right? I'm saying it right? Yeah.
Gondola.
Yeah.
Gondola. It was that's the thing you take up, the lift up, right, to the place to snowboard. But it's
the enclosed ski lift.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Exactly. And it was just a different experience. I thought it'd be easier since, I do skate a little bit, start to learn skating, but it wasn't easy at all. It was so hard. I mean, all of us were falling, but eventually, we did pick it up, and I'm going to stick with it because it's so expensive though. But now that we have all the stuff for it, we have to make good use of it.
Yeah. Well, that's why I asked if you have T-Mobile, because there's T-Mobile Tuesdays, and I went on today, and they have 30% off ski lifts if you have T-Mobile.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So for reference,
that's pretty good. Yeah.
How much was it for us to go every single day? It was $160, right? Or 180?
180, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
That
excluding our gear, right?
Rentals.
We rented gear, yeah.
So it's almost usually $200 a day in Lake Tahoe to snowboard or ski. And with this, it'll be 30% off that, the initial
ticket exactly.
To go up.
The ticket. And guys, that's the expensive part, right? It's the ski lift up. That's the expensive part. I mean, if we booked it a month, also, we didn't know, but go ahead.
Yeah. If we booked it that's exactly what I was gonna say. If we booked it maybe a month or 2 months in advance, it would have been way cheaper.
Yeah. So we know for this year, we'll probably just buy an Epic Pass and we can go whenever we want. Hopefully we get gear also this year, right? We don't have to rent.
Yeah.
So that'll be ideal.
I think it was a good decision to do snowboard first, because I think snowboarding is harder than skiing. I think someone told us skiing is easier to pick up but harder to master, and snowboarding is harder to pick up but easy to master, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So it was a good decision. Yeah, I enjoyed every single bit of it. I mean, just honestly enjoying the snow for a change. You get so used to the heat in LA. It was so relaxing and soothing. So
it was cool.
I definitely recommend it to people to try it out at least for once.
It was a blast.
Yeah.
Well, aside from that, quick little update. So I know a couple of podcasts ago I said that I was car shopping.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you got a new car. Yeah. Tell us.
Yeah, I got a Beamer. I got the new 2022 430i M package.
Yes, sir. So
yeah.
What?
Respectfully.
That's awesome, man. Show us a picture real quick. I mean, people who are hearing this obviously can't see it, but
okay.
Those who are watching the video,
you can see it. Want me to share my screen with it?
Sure.
Or should I just show you the picture on my phone?
You can show us the picture too. Whatever works.
Sure, that works.
All right, I'll just show you on my phone.
Woo!
Yeah, baby.
Nice.
That looks sick, man. That's amazing.
There's a
How
rip,
Thank you, bro.
a rip, Matt.
Dude, it's badass. I will say it's badass. Red interior. It's freaking nice, man.
it's a red
I
interior?
red interior.
Oh, let's go.
Dude,
bro.
honestly, like I feel it's weird, right? Like I just turned 21 and I feel like so blessed I'm able to afford this type of car, right? And like comfortably afford it. And so it's a really good feeling, man. And like it gives you like the motivation to want to do more, right? I'm an entrepreneur and I'm just figuring out new things to do every day, try to make more money. And like it kind of gives you that motivation to go ahead and find other avenues to make more money, right? So it's awesome. I feel good.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing with like buying expensive stuff is if it gives you self gratification like it is, then it's a good buy, you know?
Yeah,
So it's good that you bought it for yourself, you know, and that you're
for
using
sure.
that as motivation in your other project. So it's a good buy.
That's crazy.
All right, let's dive right into
Let's
what we
dive
want
in.
to talk about. We want to talk about again, I know we talk about COVID quite a bit on the podcast because we kind of have to. It's still in the news, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy talking about it. I'm honestly tired. I have severe pandemic fatigue. I'm tired of it. But we'll talk about it. We'll talk about the Omicron variant, uh, the economic outlook for 2022, and kind of looking at the Dow index and Nasdaq and seeing how they're trending and what we think, or where at least we think the market
Economic outlook, right?
yeah, in
Yeah.
general. And then what else are you going to talk about?
Oh, we're also going to talk about just a couple anecdotes, but we're also going to bring up the whole metaverse and how people are now buying physical properties, not physical, but virtual properties in a virtual world and land, and how it's just progressing so far. I think it's honestly, I think it's progressing extremely fast, right? Since I think it's one of those things that's progressed really fast from the start date. And it's insane to me. So we'll jump into it.
Yeah, it's so exciting that I kind of want to talk about it immediately because COVID is so boring to talk about, but we have to.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll get to it as soon as we can. So COVID, we had 1 million cases here in the United States. Right as Jenish left, COVID kind of took over the US, man. Jenish was the one as soon as he left, the COVID came.
I
So
was the catalyst.
so there was 1 million cases. So the cases are obviously on the uptick. A lot of people are getting Omicron because it's much more infectious. But I just want to kind of throw out some statistics that I thought were interesting to look at. Out of every 100,000 COVID cases among the age group of 0 to 17 in these last 2 years, according to the latest information that I saw, there have been 678 deaths. Obviously, one death is far too many, but statistically, 99.984% of people in the age group of 0 to 17 don't die from COVID. So, again, this disease still remains to, for the most part, affect people who are 50 and older, or people who have pre-existing conditions, or obviously, as we know now, people who have, who are overweight or obese. People who are obese accounted for 40 to 50% of COVID-19 deaths. I mean, think about that. And I feel like the problem with discussing COVID is wearing the mask obviously is important and all those other precautions, but nobody talks about how do we increase our immunity and how we actually get healthy. Like, I haven't heard Dr. Fauci tell the American people to go to the gym or to, take morning runs as much as he talks about the mask. And I feel like that can like literally save your life. If you lose weight, if you're overweight or obese, and if you significantly try to lose your weight, you can be protected against COVID much more than if you maybe wear a double mask. I mean, I feel like, let me take that back. I'm not going to compare the two, but it's just better to lose the weight and exercise. I think all of us should. We're one of the most obese nations in the world and no one talks about it. It's just sad in my opinion. So, what do you guys think we go from here?
Also,
Mm-hmm.
oh no, I would just like to add to that also that eating healthy, getting your vitamins in, all that stuff is, inherent for a strong immune system that can really help people against any variants of COVID.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I think eating healthy is generally important. I think working out is extremely important. I don't honestly, if it's not just for, because obviously everybody has different body types, right? And if it's not for like, say you're already fit even, it's not even for that. It's just for like the mental aspect of it. I think it really helps people like mentally kind of like, just deal with shit and just like kind of go about your life. And, working out is just like a good, like refresher for the day, I think. But I mean, yeah, for sure. I think also real quick about the obesity thing. I want to mention, so they measure obesity based on BMI, right? And so BMI isn't always fat. So there's people that are extremely in shape that are considered over obese. And so I think that's kind of interesting too. I mean, I don't know how much that affects the like the skew of the results or anything, but I think it's important to take into consideration as well. But yeah, I'd say like work out,
I feel like,
work out.
having had COVID, I feel like, and hearing from people who've gotten the virus, one of my friends got it again, so you can definitely get it twice as well. And he was fully vaccinated. I think one of the problems, I lost my train of thought, but what I was trying to say is that a lot of the problem is that if you're just an unhealthy person, unfortunately, COVID is just going to be that much worse for you. But if you're healthy and even if you're a little older and healthy, it doesn't affect you as much because the virus attacks your weak spots wherever those might be, and they're just going to get more aggravated if you maintain your unhealthy habits. In terms of the vaccination rates, 66% of people in California are fully vaccinated, 66%. And I believe 78% of people in the United States have received at least one dose of the vaccine. And so I don't know if it's going to get any better than this in terms of vaccination levels, right? And again, like the hospitalizations seem to be overwhelmed because a lot of people in hospitals who are supposed to provide for these people, for patients like doctors, nurses, are getting COVID. And so that's why when the news like tries to like, scare us, a lot of the mainstream media, it's because people are not there to treat the patients because they themselves are getting COVID. It's not that hospitalization levels are rising. For children, they're rising because I think usually pediatric hospitals do not have as much staff as other hospitals. So COVID deaths they have not significantly increased. They're kind of steady, if not decreasing, since the vaccination began. So if you're vaccinated, the likelihood is you're going to survive and make it out of the pandemic well. But I think my main takeaway from this, I'm kind of so, like I said, tired of talking about this, is that this pandemic is going to become endemic. It's going to stay with us, and we just need to learn how to live with it. This is the new normal. So, if you want to wear your mask, continue to wear your mask. Obviously, it can protect you against the virus. If you want to get vaccinated, you can. It will protect you against the virus. But like the lockdown measures and like for a lot of universities thinking about shifting classes for the spring to completely online makes zero sense to me. Because at this point, we know how to deal with this pandemic. There is a solution out there. And if people are not following the solution, we can't do anything about it. We don't need to suffer the people who are taking the precautions. So last thoughts, what do you like? How do we move forward from the Omicron variant? Because it's going to continue to mutate. There's no end to this.
100%.
Honestly,
like I don't
if you
wait.
we're
Go
not
ahead.
moving on. I think we as you just get the vaccine. If you want, I mean, I'm not gonna say anything, but I recommend you get the vaccine, and then just be safe, wash your hands and stuff, and just like the cold or flu or any other virus, just live. We just got to learn to adapt and live with it. Yeah. But I would like to add that the whole thing with the schools is complete BS, and a lot of that universities are also requiring everybody to be vaccinated, especially mine is for sure. And if we're vaccinated, all the students are vaccinated, all the staff is vaccinated, I don't see the problem for going in person. So
Yeah, 100%. I don't have any recommendations for anybody because it doesn't really matter to me what anybody else does. Of course, it's important to be safe and all, but it's been 2 years. Like, let's be real. Like, people are gonna do what they're gonna do regardless, and it's not for me to justify whether somebody is right for getting a vaccine or not. There doesn't matter what I say, right? Who's Matt Gutierrez in this big world? But what I will say is it's 100%. We just need to learn to live with it. That's what it is. I mean, if we think about the cold and the flu, it's the exact same process, right? I mean, there's way more deaths from the cold and the flu every year than there are COVID. And so it's like, do we learn to live with it and understand that it's just a virus that's going to be around, and there's not much we can do with it. I think that's the result, right? I don't think there's going to be an end to it. I think it will just continue on, and like, it is what it is.
Yeah. One last thing I will say is I was reading a new study, and according to it, students are doing so much worse in reading and math. Like high school students and public school students and students across the board are doing worse than they were in 2019. And the pandemic has severely affected their learning abilities. And we know that remote learning, is obviously not as effective as in-person learning. So we should also, policymakers, please keep that in mind before you decide to lock down the entire school over the virus, which again does not severely affect young people if they're healthy. So
exactly, dude. These people, I mean, some of these kids in elementary school, a lot of them, they're not doing so hot, right? Because they're not learning as effectively. I mean, because they're at home, I mean, when you're at home, you don't feel like the urge to learn. You know what I mean? I don't know if it happens to you guys, but even when I was in college, like when I was at home, I had like low motivation to, study and to do homework. But while I'm at school, like I felt on it, right? Like when I was dorming, I felt on it. Like I need to study, I need to be on it. But when I'm at home, it's like, I kind of just want to hang out. I kind of want to like, work or, watch a movie or like go hang out with friends or like whatever I want to do, just to like let the, like take the weight off my shoulders because I'm home from school for the week or whatever it is. But yeah, I think, it's definitely not good for kids if that happened to like a college student, right?
And also, man, the isolation of it all, like not being able to see your teachers or your friends, like it severely affects your mental health. Like I talked about this on the last podcast. When I got COVID, I felt the loneliest that I'd ever been in that hotel room, right? Isolated for 8 or 10 days. And yeah, and also it's been 2 years, guys. It's been 2 years. I mean, that's like almost more than 2%. If we hopefully, God willing, live up to like 80, 90 or 100, right? It's over 2% of our lifetime living during this pandemic. I was thinking about like the time, and I was just like, it's sad in my opinion that 2 years of our lives have, at least in college, have been disrupted. So I hope things get better and we kind of just like learn
Also,
to live
it's
with
not,
it. Mm-hmm.
I was just gonna say, also, it's not even just about, not seeing your teachers' friends. It's also about making new friends, meeting new people. You can't even do that now, and that was a big part of the college experience. You get to meet new people, you get to connect with people from different aspects of life.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't even think about that. I feel like we have such low expectations that I didn't even think about that part. So you're absolutely right, though. All right, let's move on to the economy part. So Matt, do you want to start us off on that?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll just talk about the so 3 things I want to talk about I thought were really interesting. So, okay, so if whoever wants to know what the Dow Jones is you'll hear all the time on the news, the Dow's up, the Dow is down, and everybody thinks it's like this big thing, right? Which it is. I mean, it's
right.
I mean, technically it's the top 20 companies in the United States, performance wise, right? Doesn't mean that it's the most important, right? The S&P 500 is the top 500 companies in the United States, which is exponentially more important. And that's why everyone says invest in the S&P. If you don't know how to invest, invest in the S&P ETF, and just, collect your 10% residual a year, which is a good idea. But regardless, the Dow has the most money into it. It's almost worth $40,000 for one share, which is pretty insane. But yeah, so the Dow is actually up today or the last few days, but the NASDAQ's been down. And what the NASDAQ is, it's the top technology companies, I want to say. I mean, there's some companies in there that aren't really technological, but generally it is like the more advanced technology companies that are in the NASDAQ. But I thought it was interesting that the NASDAQ was down because the past 2 years, I mean, we've had exponential rises, right? In technology and in, especially just the stock market in general. People have just seen extremely, how like they see high like prospects and visions for where technology is taking us, which is obviously true. But there's hasn't been real indications for why the Nasdaq's been down. So I thought that was kind of interesting what people are thinking of and what they're seeing. Maybe because it's tax season and people are needed to save up, and the Dow Jones just has extremely important companies like Waste Management, which is just a necessity in life, for somebody to pick up our trash, and those types of companies. And so the Dow will always continue to rise. Nasdaq as well in general, as well as S&P 500. It's not realistic for them to drop. But I thought it was interesting that we saw that reverse there with tech down and then these base core companies up today. So, yeah, I mean, other than that, one other thing I thought was interesting was the rise in oil prices. It's like, it's getting insane. Okay. I mean, everybody knows gas prices are up, right? But since they're going to go ahead and increase supply, they're also trying to increase the price, which usually doesn't work that way. When demand is high and supply is high, then the price usually stagnates. But the price per oil barrel is actually increasing to, I think, $77 a barrel. And check this out. I don't know if you guys remember, but in 2020, net, so obviously it costs money to buy an oil barrel, right? But if you compare the raw oil to the gas prices at our gas stations, net, it was down. So it's cheaper to buy 100 gallons worth of oil back then. It was cheaper. So you're actually profiting, right? If you buy an oil barrel, which, I mean, it's not realistic to do, but if you were to do so, it'd been cheaper to do that then. And now we're at all-time highs. So we're just seeing these exponential and like crazy turns, and it doesn't make sense. I think everybody knows that it doesn't make sense why it's happening. I mean, there's just a lot of public spending, right? A lot of consumer spending. And so there's just constant money in the market, which is part of it. But it's still ridiculous why everything continues to rise without any repercussions. What do you guys think? What do you think's happening?
So on the growth stocks, so the Nasdaq has been down partly because short-term interest rates, the Fed is thinking about spiking them up in order to control inflation. And again, the long-term treasury yields have just, went up dramatically in the last year. I believe they went up 80%. The last time I checked, the 10-year treasury yield was at 1.52. And about a year ago, it was at 0.8. So, clearly the interest rates are rising as the treasury yield continues to rise, right? That's just bad news for these tech stocks who rely on, low interest rates so that they can borrow more money, and obviously, rely on their 2, 3, 5-year plan for growth. So that's probably why,
Why
a lot
do
of
you
the
think
tech
the
stocks.
Dow, it did well? What's the? I mean, because obviously every company relies on interest rates, right, and borrowing money.
But
But
significantly, tech companies do more so.
really?
Yeah, that's like a trend. So the higher the treasury yield seems to be, at least in the last 2 years, the lower tech stocks usually go, and the higher kind of like the fixed income stocks kind of go. So the Dow is just the accumulation of 30 of the 30. It's 30 of the most prominent US companies. I mean, Dow has been up in 2021. The S&P 500 index was up. NASDAQ was also up. I think Dow was about 21%, NASDAQ at 21% as well. And I think the S&P 500 index produced a 28% return. So, they all did well, but you're right. A lot of the growth stocks, I don't know if people are familiar with companies like Skills or like Unity Software, among others. Like a lot of the ARK ETFs that I talk about a lot of the ARK stocks led by Cathie Wood are down. The entire ARK ETF, the innovation fund, was down 22% on the year, negative. Again, like I'm invested in it and I'm also negative in some of those ETFs, but that's fine because it's a 3, 4, 5-year, investment. But the crazy thing that's really, I think it was fascinating. Cathie Wood, I talk about her every podcast, but she was recently interviewed and she said that she actually thinks there's a bubble in a lot of the SPY stocks, like a lot of these like stable, stocks that are not innovating and not preparing for the future. She thinks it's a bubble there because they keep on growing up. And, she said that the growth stocks are currently not in a bubble, obviously, because they've been down on the year, most of them at least in the tech space. So I just thought those were interesting factors. But yeah, to your question, the short-term interest rates, the fear that they're rising, and also the Omicron variant, I feel like is affecting some of these names. But again, you can't really ever predict exactly what's going on in the market. Like you can't really truly understand it. But I feel like those are the two major factors at this point in time.
For sure. So in terms of like crude oil, isn't it interesting that that's going up even though EV is increasing like never before?
I feel like it's short-term trends, man. Because like like the used cars crisis, right? It's not going to stay there forever. It's just like it's just all of it COVID packed, supply chain, short-term inflation, stimulus ending around the world, all these like the confluence of all these things, I feel like is creating these weird short-term economic trends that we're not used to seeing in the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's really weird why everything happens at the same time, right? Why everything's happening at the same time. Like it's a bunch of stuff that shouldn't collide that's colliding, which is making other like resulting in other, aspects occurring, right? Like but by, crude oil increasing, that means, wages are going to have to increase, which people are already shooting for anyway. But that's my point, right? Like things are just increasing instead of kind of stabilizing. There's no like once wages increase, right? Like once minimum wage increases, there's no going back. Okay. There's not like you're going to make $15 now and then you're making $13 next year. Like that makes no sense, right? And so things are just increasing and the stability is just setting at these higher prices, right? And I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. I mean, it's literally the same thing as, or is okay. It's literally the same thing as what was going on in like the 70s and 80s, and how everything from then to now has increased like 20x. And if you do the math, everything turns out to be about the same price if you compare your wage to like prices and products. But that just means things are inflating, that there was really no point for it. And so it's just strange why everything's happening this way.
Wait, no point for what?
For wages to increase if costs are also going to increase, because it's literally the same thing, right? If you're here and now you're here, it's the same thing if you divide it by that ratio.
Yeah, but the costs are right. I mean, wages are increasing because one, the Great Resignation. Have you guys heard of this term? Like a lot of people are just not joining the labor force, right? Because the wages. I mean, they think they should be paid more, and obviously, like, so I think
but okay. Say the same thing happens next year, right? When there's no public spending. Say there's no public spending this year, right? Like there was a ton of public spending last year, but there's none this year. So in 2023, what's going to happen? Now everybody deserves to be paid $80,000 a year. Like
no.
It's not realistic.
So historically, since the 1980s, worker productivity has gone up and wages have remained stagnant. Like that's actual. Like I think I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast, but no, seriously, I think we've talked about this with Paul Niehaus, which the podcast that will release soon about basic income, universal basic income. But since the 1980s, wages have remained stagnant and worker productivity has risen. And so if we kept up wages with worker productivity, I think the minimum wage should be around $25 to $27 right now.
Okay, well, what's gauging productivity? That's such like a broad term.
Like in terms of the hours that workers put in and the output that they create has gone up since the 1980s considerably. And the average CEO income has gone up like 300 times. So wages deserve, in my opinion, to be raised. But you're right about the point. If costs are going to increase, right, then wages going up doesn't really mean it's the minimum wage is going up. It's just catching up with all the prices. So you're back at that,
or vice versa. Right.
Exactly,
costs are that's a thing, right? It doesn't matter what of course it matters. I'm a libertarian, so I don't believe in the whole CEO thing, right? But what I will say is,
wait, what do you mean you don't believe in the whole CEO thing? What do you mean by that?
If they're making 300, okay, I don't want to get into that right now. Let me prove this point, and then not prove this point, but like back my point up, and then I can get into that later. But just for this point, right? So regardless if the wages increase, or I say, yeah, sure, like the average worker deserves, more than $15 an hour. Say they deserve $20 an hour. Sure. But the problem is, head honchos at companies are gonna be like, okay, I'm paying them $20 an hour now. Now I need to compensate somehow. And so they compensate by either cutting costs, which, can be decreasing their labor force and making some people do more work, which happens way more often than one might believe in corporate America, or increasing their service or product price, right? And if you increase your service or product price, that's exactly what we're talking about. Cost of living just increases. And so it's like, this never ending thing where people think, oh yeah, great, I'm making $20 an hour, but damn it, milk just increased by $2 a gallon. And so it's just this constant thing that will never end. And I think people just need to figure out different avenues to make money. And by the way, which is happening, did you know that? So side hustles have increased by so Americans, right? Everybody that's taken the survey in America, 70% of, I don't remember who it was by. I want to say CNBC or CNN Business or some one of these major companies, right? They did a mass survey, and 70% of the surveyors said that they are doing a side hustle and they're making money through a side hustle. So I thought that was extremely interesting because that's what I advocate for. I advocate for people, finding a different avenue and making money that way rather than relying on, their minimum wage increasing. Because let's be real, $15 an hour isn't much of a difference between $20 an hour in the grand scheme of things. Okay. But if you go ahead and do a side hustle and you're making, $3,000 a month, doing whatever whether you're flipping couches or, you're flipping Pokemon cards like people are doing, that makes a difference. And so, and that boosts your, your own productivity, your own like morale. And so I think that's just the more effective route.
So I think I disagree. You know this. I disagree with you on the minimum wage issue.
I know, buddy. I know.
But so there's so many things that you said that I just think, I disagree with a lot. One of the things you said was like, there's a huge difference, man, between 15 and 20 for families, who are living paycheck to paycheck, right? So like having that $5 per hour increase can be huge. And a lot of them are working 12-hour days, 13-hour days in some cases, and they don't have time to flip Pokemon cards. They're working hard, man. And so, I mean, listen, I understand your point about, creating economic opportunities for yourself. That's 100% true. We all should, try our best to do that. But a lot of families just don't have the time or the resources to dedicate, themselves to those opportunities. And secondly,
why not?
Because they just don't have time. They're working 12, 13 hours a day. I understand that,
at a job of their choice though, right? I mean, you can always go ahead and say, hey, I'm going to shoot my resume out to 20 different companies a day. Like I literally did that for 3 months while I was working, right? I mean, sure, I don't have the bills that a lot of families do have. So I'll give you that, right? Maybe that's a little different, but I think where there's a will, there's a way with anything in life. And I don't think it's the government's job. I don't think us as citizens and consumers is right to put the government on hold to say, hey, make companies pay us more money. Like, I just don't think that's the role of the government. I don't think that should be the role of the government.
So you don't think there should be any basic minimum wage at all set by the federal government?
No, that's not what I'm saying. Like, I understand, like, of course, I mean, if they're paying $2 an hour, like that makes no sense. Mm-hmm. But I think because we're currently at 15 in California, I believe. And right, is that correct?
I don't think it's 15 yet. I think it's
or 1375,
12 or 13 or something like that.
Yeah, 1375 or whatever. So in LA County, it's for sure $15 an hour. I know that for sure. So it's like, yeah, I mean, the standard of living is now, if you want to ratio it out, cost of living compared to minimum wage, let's just say the cost of living is worth $15 an hour. Yeah, sure, keep it at that, right? But let's not go ahead and continue to increase, because when you increase your costs, I mean, or your price, not your price, sorry, your wage, your costs increase. And that's just my whole thing. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense to me. I think there's way more avenues in life.
I think one thing to keep in mind is like, I think you're right in that, when you're young and, you're kind of educated, it's easier for us to, go out, put out our resumes, apply to different jobs. But, just anecdotally, like I used to work at a fast food restaurant, and there was like this old Spanish lady that used to work with me, right? And she could barely speak English, it's hard for her to like, get new opportunities. So, for people, there are other people that are, less educated, less kind of, or older, less willing to learn new stuff, I guess. As you become older, you kind of, you start becoming more stagnant in your learning, I guess.
No, I can empathize with that. I get it.
Yeah,
but so I don't get why the minimum wage would increase though, because that just means the costs are just going to increase. Like that's what doesn't make sense to me. You're literally paying the same amount for the same wage, right? It's just inflating everything, which is actually bad for the economy and bad for the average consumer. It just means our money in the bank, right? Our money in the bank that's just sitting there. You have $10,000 today, say. I mean, in 10 years from now, that $10,000 will be worth $7,000. Like that, why would you want to do that if it's the same freaking thing, right? Like that doesn't make sense to me.
Do you know
You
what
have a point to that?
Do you know the federal minimum wages today?
No, that's bad. That's $7 and
$7,
$25.
yeah, $7.25, and
Yeah.
19 states in the U.S. match
Yeah.
that. So they're,
But their cost of living is beyond lower than our cost
it's
of living.
lower for sure.
Way lower.
It's lower, but let's
Like, let's take Idaho, for example. Let's just say Idaho. Okay.
Idaho, and you have a family, right? These two people, middle class family, they're both doing blue collar jobs, 12 hours a day, and they're probably making in, if they're doing minimum wage jobs and they're providing for 3 kids, their utilities, all their costs, I don't think $7.25 an hour is going to cut it. For sure, they can create economic opportunities for themselves, but you also have to think about this, man. Not everybody has that willpower to change their current, state of mind. And
that's also not our job. That's their problem.
No, but the thing is, like I've said, if the worker productivity has continued to increase since the 80s and their wages have not matched that, and corporate greed continues to go up, like back to your point when you said, the CEO is going to cut costs. Why don't he?
I didn't make a point about CEOs.
Not CEOs, but you were saying how if the minimum wage goes up for a company, they'll have to cut costs somehow, right?
Yeah. They don't have to, but they will.
They will, right? So why don't they cut costs by, maybe taking in lower profits and giving more to their workers, and maybe cutting down their millions of dollars in salary, right, by $1 million or $2 million, and letting the workers have a little bit more money so that maybe they're able to, with that money, create economic opportunity.
That's totally fair, but that's unrealistic.
Why
that will never happen? Because that'll never happen. Corporate America, buddy. Big corps run America. Big corps run politicians.
That's why
they run politicians.
You're right. You're right about that's never going to happen realistically. Corporate America won't do it. Yeah. That's why the federal government and the state governments are stepping in and increasing those minimum wages, right? So
but are they? That's the thing, right?
I mean, if they're raising it,
not really.
In California, they've continued.
Yeah, in California, I mean, we're historically the most democratic state.
That's one of the reasons also why you're absolutely right about a lot of states refuse to do it. That's why, a lot of Democrats or progressive want the federal government to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. So states, obviously have to comply with that federal guideline. So exactly that, you're right about corporate America never doing that. That's for the federal government.
But even what you're forgetting here is that there's not going to be a mandate on how corporations deal with that. Mm-hmm. There's no mandate on that. And they're not going to be able to create a mandate on that because big corp won't allow the politicians to do it. That's just what it is.
What do you mean mandate? They won't pay their workers $15 an hour?
No, what I'm saying is because your point was, right, we instead of cutting costs by, deleting a few employees or, increasing the product or service price, you said to what?
We're not deleting any employees, right? We're
firing them, laying them off. I didn't mean
deleting them from the ecosystem. This guy.
Okay, that's pretty funny actually. But like point being, right? Instead of taking less profit and giving the employees more money, that just won't happen. The government will not create like that not law, but like statute to do. It just won't happen. And so back to the point, it's irrelevant, right? Because the same thing's going to happen. Costs are going to increase, prices are going to increase, and then just the whole cycle over again. So, I mean, I'm a believer in being realistic, right? Of course, it'd be nice if everybody made $100,000 a year and costs stay the same, but that's just not realistic. Like, let's just be real. I mean, if people want to make $100,000, yeah, work your ass off, do it. It's never too late to go to college, or it's never too late to start a business, or, learn a new skill, read a book. I mean, I've read quite a few books in the last year, and I'm telling you, there is endless information out there that's just valuable that you can just apply to yourself and just make yourself a little better. And they're not tough reads, by the way. A lot of them aren't. Like if you read Rich Dad Poor Dad, that's extreme. I think it's like a 3rd grade level reading, but that's extremely valuable. If you know nothing about the economy, if you know nothing about like, side hustles or working real estate market or working the stock market, like that's a great basis. Rich Dad Poor Dad is an insane basis for you. So I just think that there's so much other opportunities rather than just blaming the government and telling the government to do X, Y, and Z, rather than just take control of your life, do something. That's what I'm a believer in. I don't believe in all this other stuff because it's not realistic.
condensing down my point, all I was saying was that minimum wage has not kept up with inflation, and that's not right. So that's a disservice to the workers. And sure, workers can do more with their time, and
According to who?
that's just that's like look it up. It's a fact. Like you can look up across all, I don't know, studies. That's just a sad fact. Since the 1980s, minimum wage has not kept up with inflation, and so in order to remedy that, the federal government, as you said, corporations are not going to
Right
do it
here.
themselves.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
No, yeah. Go ahead. I can hear you.
yeah, I was saying, so because you said a lot of corporations are not going to do that themselves, the federal government should step in. So that's just like my belief and point. And yeah, people should take personal accountability and responsibility. But I think if you work 12 hours a day and do an honest work, you should be able to provide for your family. Like you shouldn't struggle. You shouldn't struggle trying to, provide or put food on the table or, suffer with rent. So that's just my opinion. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess agree to disagree.
Yep.
All right. I want to talk about something that was pretty interesting. I don't know if you guys remember this story that's happened a couple years ago.
Hey, Jenish, can you please give some input about the economy?
My
No,
input
I'm just
is
kidding.
just fake it till you make it, just like what I'm about to talk about. Elizabeth Holmes. I don't know if you guys have heard of her. She's the infamous CEO that pretty much faked it till she made it, and then kind of messed up everything. So a couple years ago, she founded a company called Theranos, and it was a biotech startup. Um, and pretty much she said that she has created a technology that would allow a few blood drops to, uh, see if there's any diseases or cancer within the individual or the patient, right? And this would be like a self-service machine, so everybody can use it. And this technology would have transformed, all of pharmacology, and pretty much changed everything in the medical industry. And everybody was behind it. There was billionaires like Larry Ellison, who founded, Oracle, and many other investors were putting billions of dollars into her company. And by the age of 30, she was a billionaire. And she pretty much faked all of this, by the way. On a lot of her investor, pamphlets and stuff, she would put stamps or logos of big companies like Pfizer, without Pfizer even knowing. She never even contacted Pfizer. She would just put their logos and stuff, and just made it, make it seem like they backed her company up. Eventually, everything was found out by journalists. They found out that she faked everything, and she was pretty much gone from the whole Silicon Valley ecosystem. She was just gone. And recently, there's been a trial where prosecutors spent 11 weeks with more than like 14 witnesses, and they all laid out how Holmes knew her technology did not work as promised and misled investors. And now she faces the possibility of going to jail on the count of fraud. So I think that this is pretty crazy that you can even fake it till this point. Like, it blows my mind that people can invest billions of dollars into you without even knowing what they're investing into. And that I feel like this trend has become more and more common. Like, I don't know if you guys remember this company called Nikola. It was like a electric vehicle company or something like that, and they pretty much faked it till they made it. They pumped their stock, it went up to like $100, and then it all dropped. So I can't believe this is like a common trend, and people are actually falling for this type of stuff. And I want to get you guys' thoughts on, like, the whole Silicon Valley environment of you fake your startup, then you sell your company for millions of dollars, even though it's worth $0.
One thing, I have a question. Didn't this come up a couple years ago too? The same girl?
No. It was the same girl, and it's for the same company. It's just now she was formally taken into trial, and now she can actually be put into jail.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. So a couple years ago, it was like announced, right, that it was a fraud, whatever. Now
Yeah,
it's
it was
just
announced.
in trial.
Now it's legalities of it. But yeah,
Gotcha.
we all knew it was BS. Now it's for the legal system to point out that it was BS.
That's mad. And you know what's more mad? she's probably gonna get barely any time in prison. White collar crime is so like, it's insane how like little you get time in jail. Not only that, you're not going to normal prison, right? You're going to a white collar prison. That's I just think it's crazy, right? I think billions of dollars taken deserve some time in jail, right? Like that's not okay. And she's probably gonna get, I don't know, is there a timeline on there? Have they set a timeline or no? They haven't said any.
No, they haven't said any timeline.
Yeah, I'm
I
thinking like,
think
dude,
each
it's gonna
of
be like
the-
less than 36 months.
No. So each of the counts that she was found guilty on carries
Yeah.
a maximum sentence of 20 years. So I don't think the judge has done the sentence.
And it won't be 20 years, right?
I don't know yet. I don't know. We'll see
It
what the
will-
judge
it will not be.
decides. Or
No,
I doubt it will be 20 years.
100% won't.
I
It
doubt
never
it.
is for
And
these
also,
guys. Enron was what? The guy for Enron was 18 months. Like that was huge. That was the same equivalent, right? It was what, $4 billion that was taken from Enron. You know,
the,
he got,
the,
like, 18
the
months.
defense is pretty much saying that the defense is pretty much saying that she invested in herself, and it just failed. The company failed. There was nothing more to that. It was just that simple. And you know what else? Though this is also kind of crazy. I don't know if they're doing it to get more favor and give her less time, or I don't know why they're doing this right now, or maybe it was real. I can't make any assumptions. But she is also filing charges against her ex boyfriend, who was a part of the company as well. I see her name. Her name was Balwani. It was Ramesh Balwani, right? So she's also blaming the Balwani and said that she sexually assaulted her and stuff like that. And he forcefully denied all of this, by the way. But she's kind of trying to blame maybe her boyfriend as well for some of this stuff. So I don't know if this is just to get more favor towards her, or what that is for. Maybe it really did happen, but I also found that pretty interesting.
So check this out. So she worked for HP back in 2014, and same thing that she's getting not appealed for, but she's getting convicted for right now, wire fraud. She was convicted for wire fraud, and she pled guilty, and she actually served in Victorville for 13 months back in 2014. So check that out. Like, people don't change, right? You just adapt and overcome, and she thought she could do it again and succeed. And fortunately she did it. Not unfortunately. Fortunately, she didn't succeed.
are you sure she worked for HP? Because I thought she
Right
was
here,
working on
Hewlett-Packard.
Theranos. Really, Elizabeth Holmes? Wow. I thought she started in 2005, right? And she continued it on until that
Wait, let me
everything
double check this
unfolded.
article.
Yeah, I don't think she ever worked for HP, because as far as I remember, things kind of stopped in 2017 or 2018. But I was reading this article, and according to a Stanford law professor, she'll probably face like 1 to 3 years in prison only. So, it's nothing close to the maximum sentence of 20 years that each of the counts carries. But I think the most interesting
Okay,
thing,
Sorry, it wasn't her. It was her prison consultant, Holly Coleman.
yeah,
That's who it was. Sorry, yeah.
yeah, that makes sense, because I was like,
No.
I don't think she ever worked at HP, because she was always at
Yeah,
Theranos.
I was thinking that too, because she graduated. She didn't graduate. Sorry, she dropped out of college her sophomore
When she was
year,
19, right?
and then
Yeah.
founded. Yeah, and then she founded Theranos, which should have been a big kind of red flag, because someone with I don't imagine like a sophomore of a dropping out creating like some revolutionary biotech
Bill Gates.
invention.
Not biotech.
No, but that's different, because she wasn't even majoring in biotech. She
Right.
didn't have that much experience in any of that, and that's completely different from software. If if it was like a software, it'd be different. But this requires like a lot of resources, and like it's like a physical invention, right? So it's a bit much for, I feel like, for someone who's a sophomore launching a company. But I know maybe it's
Fair.
still possible, but
Hey,
I would
but-
kind of be if I was an investor, I would kind of be more making
More
sure
weary,
everything
of
is
course.
good.
Hey, but Bloomberg says she's a very disciplined woman. Right here. Holmes is no
Whoa.
stranger to a disciplined life, according to documents presented at her trial. From 2005 to 2009, described a daily routine of waking at 4 a.m., meditating, and then eating whey and a banana for breakfast. Hey, man, she's a disciplined lady.
She was her biggest inspiration was Steve Jobs. Hence, she wore that turtleneck, the black
Yeah.
turtleneck and stuff.
Really?
And I find it funny because Steve Jobs, to an extent, he had that fake it till you make it mentality, but he actually delivered. Because I don't know if you guys, if you I don't know if you guys remember, but on the first ever iPhone demo, all this they didn't have the touch functionality working properly for the iPhone demo. So pretty much the coders in the back, they had to hard code everything. So on like the display, pretty much when Steve Jobs would move the the slider to unlock his phone, it wasn't actually moving due to fingerprint. It was all hard coded in. It was like a video playing, and he was just following it. So he literally faked it. He on the big stage, but then he actually delivered later on. So it all worked out. But I feel like you can take it to a certain extent, but if you just fake the whole freaking company, then I mean you're literally just doing nothing,
Definitely mad.
I think the weird thing about Theranos, I think you mentioned was like her strategy was getting just like these big names and these big people on her board. We did like an analysis in our business class about what went wrong with Theranos, and she had Henry Kissinger sit on her board. Henry Kissinger was a former Secretary of State of the United States under Nixon, I believe it was. So like, and Henry Kissinger is a really big diplomat, but what does a diplomat know about biotech? So she had like all these big names on her board just for show, and she's kind of a psychopath. Do you guys know about the chief scientist at Theranos and how he killed himself? So Ian Gibbons, he was like one of the first hires that Holmes made, and he grew really wary of a lot of the inaccuracies in Theranos's tech, and he used to bring it up to Elizabeth Holmes. And then one day, I'm not 100% familiar with the exact details of the story, but the short end of it is that he was scared that he was going to get fired, and he eventually killed himself. So the thing is, when he killed himself, let me just read it from this Business Insider article. When he killed himself, Rochelle, the guy's wife, Ian Gibson's wife, called Holmes's office to explain what had happened. Quote, the secretary was devastated and offered her sincere condolences, but when she told Rochelle Gibbons that she would let Holmes know immediately. But a few hours later, rather than a condolence message from Holmes, Rochelle, his wife, instead received a phone call from someone at Theranos demanding that she immediately return any and all confidential Theranos property. So she didn't even have the decency to, give condolences to the wife of his chief scientist, who, mind you, killed himself because he was scared he was going to get fired. And he brought up concerns about this tech and inaccuracies to her repeatedly. So she's a psychopath. It makes sense.
That is scary.
Yeah.
Okay,
imagine
wait,
that.
but
Imagine for working for a company that you actually like, there's some belief in it, right? Like you believe in it because of what this lady is saying. And later finding out, like going through the research and kind of doing your due diligence, that everything's kind of a hoax. Like that's pretty scary, right? And then finding out she's later a psychopath or whatever you want to call her. I mean, that's pretty mad. I mean, I don't think it's means to kill yourself. Yeah. I don't think it's means to kill himself, but I that sucks.
I don't know what was going through his head, man. Like I have no idea. Maybe it was just guilt.
That's tough.
Maybe he was just like, guilty. Like, and maybe feeling guilty because he's a chief medical or chief tech officer or something along those lines, right? So I don't know. It could be a host of things, but that's the thing that's scary. Like one person can mislead seasoned investors and lead them into investing in something that's a complete fallacy. I mean, that's just like so crazy to me.
One person can lead a whole nation to believe in something. We've seen this.
That's
in history,
true, man.
We've seen this in history. Of course, they could do it with the company if they could do it with the whole nation.
I guess it goes back to what he said, right, Matt? When you have will, you can do pretty much.
When there's a will, there's a way.
Oh my
God.
It's
so true. It's so true. It's honestly insane how much confidence will take you literally anywhere you want, right? As long as you're confident and I have a saying where I think perception is one of the most important things. The way people perceive you is the way you're going to come off, right? And the way people perceive you is going to be your outcome in life, right? Because people are in charge of whether your product is good or not, whether your service is good or not, whether they want to work with you or not, whether they want to give you the job or not. So really everything in life is based off of your persona and your perception to these people. And, you come off as a confident person, they're going to treat you that way. They're going to treat you like you know what you're talking about. And so it's insane. It's insane how much it'll take you, how far it'll take you.
I'm thank God that they saw through this stuff, and I hope she goes to prison for a long time, because that shit is not good. I feel like, and people like her should not be, making businesses and falsely leading people to invest and ruin their lives for her cause, I guess.
So I was also wrong about something. Just want to clear it up real quick. Generally, like financiers that come off from like Ponzi schemes or like fraudulent charges, they usually get a lot of time. But one of the big guys, Bernie Madoff, he actually served. I mean, he got 150 years in prison. So that was definitely not typical. He died 12 years into it, but he did get 150 years, which is pretty insane. And I believe it was an actual prison too. It wasn't like a white collar prison. Maybe because why do you think that is? Do you think it was because like the size of the case? Because obviously that was one of the biggest cases in history.
Yeah, well, that's because he was literally the biggest, like one of the biggest con men in history. Like the biggest. I mean, his Ponzi scheme was like worth 65 billion. Yeah. So I mean, if it was any guy that was gonna get that kind of treatment, it was this guy. So, but you're right about.
Well, this is pretty hefty as well. I would say this is like $10 billion plus.
Yeah.
For sure. It's also pretty.
But hefty. It is like in a whole Silicon Valley frame, so it's like maybe it'll be less. It's not as much. Well, it is conning, but like it's.
But either way, right? I mean, she only got guilt. She not pled. I don't think she pled guilty, but I think she pled guilty for 3 of the 12 accounts, and that's what they're convicting her for. And each of the count, like he said, was 20 years, so maximum 60 years. And then good behavior, she'll probably serve like 20 to 25 if it's maximum, right? That's maximum. So likeliness is that it's not going to be maximum, and it'll definitely be under like 10 years.
I don't think she pled guilty.
I think she got convicted.
Yeah. So she was convicted of 4 of the charges out of the 12. So
3. I just read.
Yeah, 3 or 4, either one. But yeah, so she maintained her innocence. Yeah. Clearly, I mean, what Jenish cited, the meditation part, how she was talking about how she wakes up at 4 a.m., has a really disciplined, regimented diet or process, morning routine. That doesn't matter. You can still be a fraud and,
hey, man,
take care of yourself.
Bloomberg doesn't lie, okay? They're the only news source out there that's true to the word, okay? They're the media.
All right, let's. Do you guys want to transition into the metaverse real estate, and we'll end at that?
Yeah, let's end at that.
So
okay, I mean,
so explain to us like what's happening, the whole real estate in the metaverse virtual world. Like, what does that even mean?
To me, it's extremely bizarre, and I'm very mixed. I have very mixed feelings about the metaverse. I personally don't think I will ever participate in the metaverse. I don't see I guess I've never used an Oculus, so I guess I don't see like the sensation of being in a virtual world when I can be in the real world. And do real things that are actually human. But regardless, what the metaverse is basically, I mean, we all know what it is, right? It's a virtual space. And in this virtual space, essentially it's a free roam game, right? Like you can buy stuff, you can do what you want. You can be the avatar that you want to be. You can have the house that you want to be. And maybe the stuff you're not capable of having in real life, right? And so I get the appeal to some people. They just want to put the goggles on and just like get lost. And so that's what they do. They just get lost in this virtual reality where they could be somebody better than, maybe their real life self is. But regardless, right now what's happening is, so NFTs kind of started this whole ploy where you kind of buy a virtual space of a product. I mean, typically it's been art, right? So what we've seen art in the forms of monkeys. We've seen art in the forms of, Michael Jordan slamming a slam dunk. And so they're selling these pieces of art for a lot of money. And that's a space of the digital realm. And regardless, I mean, same as all, right? I mean, the real estate space in it, there's a set limit of space you can have in this metaverse. And in that space, people are acquiring property and they're acquiring land. And they think it's going to be worth some value later on, or else people wouldn't buy it, right? If it's not going to make them more money. It's some of these investors, at least. But I think that's the crazy part, that people are acquiring fake land in a fake world where people will go into as fake people to do fake things. It's just a really crazy concept. I know a lot of people
But
are
if
saying it's
everything
not good.
is that everything is fake, then that's real. You know what I mean?
Hey man, you're right. I don't know. I think it was Heidegger. What do you say? If the tree falls in the forest, does it really make a sound type of thing, right? Like if nobody's there to see it, or if everybody's there to see it, then maybe it is real. And if majority of people are there, then majority of people believe it's real and it is real. But I think it's
Yeah, go
both.
ahead.
I think it's okay. People can go in the metaverse and be the person they want to be, and that's honestly okay to me because like I'm a person. I like to travel. I like to do things. I like to have real experiences that I can take to my grave with. Right? You know, maybe on my deathbed, I could be thinking back about experiences that I've had, and I value that a lot. And I value like real relationships a lot. And like talking to real people. And maybe some people will get value from talking to real people in a fake world, but not to me. And I think it's okay because that means less people will be traveling, less traffic on the streets because people will be having their goggles on in their house. And that's all good to me. So people do what you want and I'll do what I want. What do you guys think about this whole real estate thing? I think it's absurd, but I understand the appeal, I guess.
So I haven't looked into it that much, but how do I apply to be like a virtual broker? I want to try to do that, show people the virtual, show different properties, in the virtual world, make
Hey
some
man,
money
you're
on the side,
thinking, you're thinking.
side hustle.
That's
I
a good
think
one. That's honestly a good one. I don't know. I'm sure there will be brokers eventually and people to constitute what's allowed in the metaverse and what isn't.
Can you imagine that? Like, how do you even like? Wow, it's so fascinating. I don't know if it's fascinating, but it's
Well,
definitely
the
interesting.
thing is, there's like for all these virtual worlds, there's gonna be like one big company who's gonna be kind of the owner of the whole worlds, I guess, if that makes sense. So they'll be pretty much controlling everything that's happening, or they
Dude,
can
imagine that.
control everything that's happening.
Facebook owning one world and then just say like hypothetically, right? Amazon owning another world and you can like go from one world to another world like it's Mars and Earth.
Yeah. No. I feel like no. I feel like there's gonna be multiple worlds in like I don't know. Maybe I'm like abstracting it too much, but I feel like there's gonna be like multiple worlds in each world, or each like. So if it's like Facebook or Meta has their own world, there's gonna be like different like planets or like dimensions or whatever in that world, right? But I don't know. I think this. I mean, I was always think like I game a lot, or I used to game a lot when I was younger. I always think the idea of like the metaverse is pretty cool. It's like something you can go into, have some like cool experiences. Maybe it's like fun to walk around and do stuff. I don't think it'll be like anytime soon, like be a replacement for real life. I think it'll just be like a source of entertainment. You go in, you have fun. It's like a video game. You go in, you
Yeah.
do stuff, you meet people. I don't know if it's gonna get that extreme where it's like that's like you're living a whole nother life in there or something like that. Maybe that will happen at some point. But I think it's a cool idea. And this whole real estate thing, I think it's just like another, it's just another thing that comes with this whole metaverse. And more stuff's gonna come like that. After real estate, they're gonna have like, I don't know, maybe they'll have like food or something where you can like taste food. I don't even know, like they'll have different like things that they add in the metaverse. So I think it'll be pretty cool.
My
I thought this was
problem,
go ahead, go ahead.
my whole problem is like, what value is the metaverse creating for humans instead of just pure entertainment as an escape? Like maybe I'm just ignorant, but I feel like the
Yeah, well,
metaverse
that's the
is
value. That's the
just
value.
entertainment.
Entertainment and escape. Yeah. Why do we make movies? What value does it provide
No,
human beings?
no, no, no. That makes sense
That's an
because that's
art, right?
yeah,
That's an
that's like
art.
an art form. But as a like I feel like living in the metaverse, people who will, I don't know, people who again, like I don't want to make assumptions, but it feels like people who are not happy with their current lives would completely live in the
Well,
metaverse and like have
I
live
think
in
they
a VR
will.
world
I think I
constantly.
think I think you guys are just thinking of like extreme examples. Like, yeah, there's some people that are on Facebook all day, like 24 hours a day. That's their life.
Dude, I think there's a
But
lot more than we think that are just on
yeah,
social media. I think there's a lot.
yeah,
Like
that
imagine
may
how
be
many people like
true.
just don't leave the house. Like there's a lot of people that just don't leave the house, right? A lot of kids that just don't leave the house. And all they're doing, like if you see some of these people's screen times, like I've seen a few people's screen times and I'm just like, How are you on there 16 hours a
Yeah.
day, right? And you sleep 8 hours. Like you're literally on there 24, I mean, not 24/7, but your entire waking life. Like that's absurd. And that's what's happening.
I mean, yeah, that could happen. That is a possibility, but I don't think it's gonna be as extreme as you guys are phrasing it right now. Everybody's just living in the metaverse. I think it's gonna just be a source of entertainment. People are gonna go. It's gonna be like a video game. I feel like people are gonna go in there, maybe meet their friends, their like avatars, talk with
Buddy, you're a
them.
believer in Nietzsche. How are you okay with this? It's an
I'm fine.
escape.
It's like
Escapes aren't okay.
it's entertainment, man. It's fine. Like uh, everything is an escape, like that humans do. Like, I feel like a lot of things that we do is an escape. Like I think
For
like watching
sure.
TV, watching movies, that's a form of escape. And I don't know. I just feel like this is gonna be
But
another
okay,
like
but
playing
what I
video
will
games.
say, man, about watching movies and TV shows, I feel like the most interesting part is talking to people that have also seen it. And that creates like some like symbiotic relationship. They're like, you guys are like cool with, I mean, you guys both agree on something and you guys talk about it. And then that conversation leads to other things, right? Like just like we were talking about Succession, like that's a pretty big TV show. And I mean, there's real world problems in the film, in the TV show, right? And me and even were talking about it, and or we talk about like Marvel, right? Like sure, it's entertainment, but it also like provokes thought-provoking conversation sometimes. how
Well,
how
maybe
how
the
will
metaverse might do that. I don't know. We don't know what's gonna happen. Like we I think right now we don't have a basic framework of what it's gonna look like. After a couple of
That's
years, when we're
fair.
gonna have like a basic framework of how it's gonna be inside, then it's gonna make more sense. Like I feel like a couple of years ago, if you told someone about TikTok, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't have made sense like 10 years ago. But now it makes sense. Like it's just like, oh, there's videos and stuff.
That's
So
fair.
I feel like just with time we'll see what it's like. If it is that extreme where it's like everybody's just staying in it, that will be a pretty crazy. That wouldn't be that healthy in my opinion. But I always I enjoyed playing video games. Video games fun. I like watching TV and all that stuff. It's kind of like maybe like the metaverse is like interactive way of doing that. Maybe like you can watch a movie with your friends in there. There's like a place you go to and you watch a movie there, and it'll be like interactive thing you do in a
Why
virtual
wouldn't you want to
world or
see them in
something.
real life and do the
I
same
don't know,
exact
man.
thing?
Maybe you can meet like new people from like different parts of the world that you wouldn't be able to, and like
Like Omegle.
yeah, yeah, something like that. Like there's so many possibilities, like in the whole like metaverse. I think there's a lot of possibilities, and I think if they do it right, it'll be a cool concept. And I hope Meta, I can't say Facebook anymore. I hope they don't try to make it. I mean, I know they're gonna do this, but they're gonna try to make it as addictive as possible, just like Facebook or Instagram or anything. So I feel like they're gonna push it to extremes and make it a little unhealthy. But I think it's up to people to not fall into those like addictive habits and
Yeah.
patterns. But yeah.
I was listening to a podcast today and I thought it was kind of interesting. Meet Kevin, right? Him and Graham stuff. Honestly, everybody should go watch that episode. The newest episode of the Iced Coffee Hour with Graham Stephan and Meet Kevin. Not sponsored. Like I don't know these guys. Like it doesn't matter whether I say this or not. It was honestly extremely informative if you're just like interested in anything business, and it was really like helpful, right? Just to like know, and a lot of tax like talks, and it was really cool. But regardless, me Kevin spoke about the metaverse and how he was kind of against it because just kind of what I was saying, like I don't want to be in this fake world. But he said that it'd be interesting instead of like sitting down and like watching a TV show, kind of what you're saying, right? Instead of watching a TV show with his girl, he can go, or his wife, I don't know if it's his girl, his wife, him and his wife can go visit the Great Wall of China for, some time. And he said that that might be interesting. I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't value going to visit the Great Wall of China in a fake world. It's completely different. Which leads me to, if you guys, I mean, I could talk about it now or I could talk about it after. Do you have another thing to talk about for
No,
metaverse?
No.
go ahead, man.
Yeah,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Okay. So there's a book I'm reading called Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. And it's a really good book. It's extremely interesting. He gives a lot of anecdotes about life. And he's just a really great author. He's able to shift it from like you feeling happy and laughing at what he's saying to like a despairing moment in his life. And I just think it's pretty artistic the way he's able to write and express himself. But there was this one chapter called sniff stickers, or sniffing stickers. You know, the ones where you scratch and sniff, those scratch and sniff stickers. I mean, have you seen those where you scratch them and it smells like strawberries or watermelon or whatever, right? So he was talking about that. And the funny thing is, you're scratching and sniffing it, and it's supposed to be a banana, right? It smells nothing like a banana, but it makes you think it's a banana, right? Like when you think of a banana, you probably think of the smell that the scratch and sniff gave you rather than the actual banana smell. Or like, you know, other things like the way rubber smells. It doesn't really smell like rubber, but it's the idealized depiction of it. And so, you know, going to visit the Great Wall of China in this metaverse, it's not the real Great Wall of China, right? I mean, it's not going to smell like the Great Wall of China. It's not going to like feel like the Great Wall of China, but I mean, that might be your depiction of it. Now that might be your perception, and that's what you can go visit the Great Wall of China, but your depiction will be what you're seeing in your goggles all the time. That's more realistic than, you know, going to visit actually. And I just thought that was super interesting how humans, even though we know something's not true, we continue to like think it's true, and we convince ourselves that it's true just because we're seeing it. Like our eyes deceive us all the time, right? With almost everything. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. You guys should read the book, and it kind of relates to a lot. I think it relates to a lot of things in life that you might not think are so relatable. But yeah, Anthropocene reviewed.
Also, I think with the metaverse, I'm not you know, I'm pretty confident that people will use it extensively, right? And it's gonna become popular. And like you said, it's just gonna be an escape for a couple hours. For some people, it might be 10 hours, 12 hours, right? Their entire day. But I think it's just not healthy, like Matt said, to live our lives that way, to live in an alternative reality that we're using purely as a means of escape instead of, you know, addressing our problems in the real world. We're using it as a means to an end. So ethically, I don't know if that's the right thing to do, but most certainly people will start to embrace it more in the next, you know, 2 to 5 years. So it's definitely going to happen, and we'll see.
I mean, it's just like a better social media. That's how I'm thinking about it. It's just like a more interactive social
Isn't
media.
good for us.
Yeah, it's
Social
not
media's
good for us.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not. But
So
I feel like it'll be.
so a better social media would be even worse
Is
for us,
more
right?
addictive. Yeah, it would be worse. Yeah, no, I agree. But I'm saying for those people who are, I guess you guys are right in that, like, you know, a lot of people will get addicted to this type of stuff, and, you know, kids will be on there constantly, and I think that is bad. But I think the concept and the technology behind it's going to be pretty cool, and as long as, you know, your people are aware, and they're not going to be, but hopefully we are, that, you know, you don't want to spend your whole life in there, and, you know, you're not going to just freaking, you know, waste your life doing this in a fucking virtual world. You'll be fine. It'll be like a cool experience. You can do, you know, like we could watch TikTok videos. So it's for like 30 minutes of, it's fine, right? Same thing. I think we can go in the virtual world, be cool, whatever.
There.
Also, I think they're gonna develop it so efficiently, and it's gonna be so good that when people try it, it's gonna be so hard to say no. And I think all three of us are biased because we haven't really tried it, right? I'm sure we'll like it, but I don't know if we'll want to make it.
Of course, we'll like it. We'll probably love it, right? We'll probably
love it, and people will fall into that trap. Yeah, it's gonna be hard to resist.
Discipline. It's discipline, right? And like knowing that it's not real, just like what you're saying, Ibrahim. Like it's an escape, and I think the longer you, I mean, I'm a firm believer. The longer you suppress your issues, the harder it gets, and the more difficult it becomes, and the more problems arise. And I think that's all it is. I think that's all really social media is, just like suppressing. But you know, that's the reality we live in.
I mean, some aspects of social media is like pretty fun. Like I think memes are cool. I think like sending,
it's funny.
Like, yeah, memes are funny. I think, like, you know, like some Instagram pages are cool. Like they post cool stuff. You know, like not everything is about it is just like, you know, degenerate or like
maybe not. What I do like about social media is like, I think it provides, like, there's some things that just provide a lot of value, right? And like I think what I do like about it is I get a lot of those motivational speeches, and I would never have heard them if it wasn't for like TikTok. And I think like some of the, like when you hear Steve Harvey talk or Steve Jobs talk, some of them are like really what's it called, like deep, like they were deep in like the documents, right? Like nobody really knew about it. and like they then post it because they found it, and then it's like spread out. Like I would never heard like certain Steve Jobs interviews or like certain things that these head guys are saying that actually provide real value. So I think that's a cool thing about social media.
I think it just comes down to balance with anything. If you balance, even with the upcoming metaverse that people will embrace, and even with social media, if you balance it out, it can be beneficial for you. But again, most people are not able to balance things, and they tend to waste their time on things that are entertaining or easy to access or easy to use. And that's what's going to happen with metaverse. But again, if you balance it out, if you use it responsibly, it's probably a good thing. Maybe it'll add value to your life, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen for the overall population across the world. So we'll see what happens. I think it's a
We'll
good
see what
note to
happens.
end the. Go ahead.
Yeah, just the last point. I'm just excited to see what it's gonna look like because I feel like we are all imagining the metaverse in like a different way a little bit. I'm kind of imagining as like a game sort of way. Maybe you guys have a different view about it, but I want to see what the final product's like and if it's actually gonna live up to how we're thinking about it.
Yeah, I feel like with new technologies, people are always, dubious about them, and maybe in some instances, rightly so. But when people start to see the value, and when we see consumers embrace it, minds change, things change, and habits change, and then the change just evolves and it becomes like a normal part of life. So it's probably what's going to happen with metaverse as well. But yeah, we'll see. Any other last thoughts?
That's all for me.
All right, man.
Nada.
Good talk. We'll end the podcast on this note, and hopefully we'll see you guys next week. Take care.